Hello and welcome to Newsbreak Chats. I'm Shai Hoffelenia, the editor of Newsbreak. Ito ang investigative at in-depth section ng Rappler. I believe this is our fourth episode already under quarantine, although this time around, more relaxed na yung restrictions. By next week, June 30, President Rodrigo Duterte would already be in office for 4 years. If you recall, he took his oath as president on June 30, May 2016. Sorry, that's June 30, correct, June 30, 2016. 2 taon na lang at dapat magkakaroon na ulit ng eleksyon by May 2022. The past months have been quite tough for the administration, not only for the administration, but for the entire country and the world because the coronavirus pandemic continues to rage. At I'm sure maraming nadiskaril na mga plano at priorities ng administration. For today's episode, I thought of inviting one of our intrepid reporters. She's been following the president for years. Never mind if she's been banned from the palace. Please welcome Pia Ranada. Hi, Pia.
Hi.
And I also invited the senior editors to join us in today's discussion. I'd like to introduce first, not necessarily siya ang pinaka-senior, si Marites Vitug, who's our editor at large. Hi, Marites.
Hi.
And we also have with us Glenda Gloria, our managing editor.
Hi, hello.
And of course, Miriam Grace Go, or Gigi Go, who's our news editor. Hello, ladies.
Hello. It's been 4 years.
How fast
How's the pandemic treating you? Let's start lang siguro with the discussion. No? So yes, Glenda said nga it's been 4 years. I was wondering, how would you describe or how would you best characterize President Duterte's fourth year in office? We started, well, in May 2019, last year, we got off from elections. And then, ngayon naman, June, we're still in the middle of a pandemic. So how would you characterize the past year? Who wants to start?
I would say that the fourth year began on a high note because the May elections really cemented Duterte's power over government, over, for example, the Senate, and it really impressed upon people that this is a president who is able to, who can still retain his high approval ratings. Let's not forget that a few months ago, in January, the start of 2020, he attained his highest ever approval rating of plus 72. So the year started on a high note, but then quickly escalated to a crisis that no one ever saw coming, least of all Duterte. If you look at his press conferences recently, he's very tired looking, he's exhausted, he's very sick and tired of being locked up in Malacanang, unable to see his grandchildren. So we have a very swift turn of events where he appeared all powerful at one point, but then the pandemic just unraveled him and showed many lapses and holes in his governance style.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Marites?
Yes, I think we will always remember 2020 as the year that, as a defining year for Duterte, mainly because of the pandemic, as Pia had mentioned. And for me, a crisis defines a leader, and a crisis shows the character of a leader. So for this crisis, which is unprecedented, we have seen how unable Duterte was in leading the government and the country to contain the virus. So nakita natin na hindi pala niya naintindihan ang public health crisis. Nakita natin na ang response niya ay template pa rin sa drug war, yung using force. So sa akin, we will always remember this year talaga as the time that napakita yung limited grasp niya of issues beyond force.
Mm-hmm. Anything to add to that, Glenda or Gigi?
Yeah, I think Yeah, I agree with both Marites and Tia. I think this is a year of unraveling. The the political gains that happened in May 2019, and it was a very huge political gain, di ba? He dominated the Senate, etc. Parang
Wipe
ano na yun
out.
eh. It's just parang ang tagal lang, parang it's a lifetime ago because of the pandemic. And now it's the incoherence of government has really punished us in a daily in a sort of way, and therefore we will always look back to this year as the kind of year that really unmasked the weaknesses of his leadership, um, and also the very strengths that he used in the first 3 years, di ba? Yung bang bang, shortcut, he always had a workaround to certain things, a quick solution. This did not fit um, the the requirements of a pandemic, di ba? So, and therefore, parang, you need pala to listen to all sides, you need processes, you need to understand complex things, and therefore, doon, nag-unravel siya doon.
Mm-hmm. Gigi?
I think yung results ng midterm elections that heavily favored people allied with him, and then when he cemented his control on the two other supposedly independent branches of government the past year, that took those things took away his ability to come up with excuses or blaming some other administrations, blaming some other people about why he couldn't move the country forward. So nasa kanya lahat ngayon yung focus now. So all this time, critics were correct when they would say you're not a strategic thinker, you are incompetent sa higher level ng governance. Wala na siyang excuses because supposedly andito lahat yung support for him to do better. But hindi yan nangyari.
Sige, maybe before we go into a discussion of the pandemic, because as you say nga, it really defines the past year, no? Maybe fairly or unfairly, parang ilang buwan lang yon pero parang na-wipe out karamihan ng mga nagawa in the earlier months. But so before we talk about the pandemic and his administration's response, I'd like to ask you also, parang in terms of achievement, sabi nga ni Pia kanina, he started on a high note this year, and even last year, ang daming, he really took control, no? Yung mga kandidato niya, mga nanalo talaga. So that's a position of strength. What was he able to do given that position of strength prior to the pandemic? Pia?
For one, if you remember, the whole of 2019, isang persistent drama was the water crisis. And it started with dry faucets at the beginning of 2019. And in December 2019, it culminated in Duterte's attack on Ayala's and MVP. And ultimately, it led to these business tycoons pandering to him. Diba? They knelt down. They were brought to their knees by Duterte's rants, his threats. And for me, this signified a victory for him, at least in his mind and also in the mind of his supporters. Because, I know master stroke niya, at first he was just angry na yung arbitration, natalo yung government sa arbitration. The business tycoons appeared to parang one-up him. So he turned it around and started saying, no, you agreed to these onerous contracts which disadvantaged poor Filipinos. So automatically, he turned it from like a personal vendetta to suddenly I'm protecting the interests of Filipinos. And then yun, the tycoons came back groveling, diba? The Ayalas were forced to give up some of their shares to Razon, etc. And eventually, parang they conceded to the new contracts that the government would draft. And true enough, a few months later, Duterte scored an all-time record high approval rating from the poorest Filipinos. So, although it's hard to pinpoint a direct correlation, you can say that maybe he was able to turn this crisis to his favor, in that he was able to emerge again as the defender of the poor, compassionate against the oligarchs of the country. So in that sense, for me, that probably counts as his big victory of the past year.
Do you agree, Glenda?
Yes, I think his biggest accomplishment the past year, aside from the fact that his candidates won in May 2019, is that he's able to keep his political base very sticky and very deep. Despite all the problems, even in the face of the pandemic, uh, it's a strong political base. And therefore, presidents usually entering the fourth year uh, would suffer a bit of decline in survey ratings, and which is not. And but beyond that, I think his biggest accomplishment as well is um, the president has managed to keep intact the key people that provide valuable advice to him and help him um, govern the country. Which means, for example, the finance secretary has been with him from day one. The defense chief, I mean, Kalida, his go-to for the attacks against his critics, and so he's able to, Bongo would be the parang perceived boy Friday, no? But I guess he relies on these old men as well, to for their advice on critical sectors, diba? That's the economy, security, and anyo, for example, for police. So tight yon. It's a tight command of people who matter as far as his leadership is concerned.
And yet, yung sa China, for example, the way he has handled China, that's a very contentious point, di ba? Because even if you look at the surveys, parang Filipinos are not entirely sympathetic to him. And but he has maintained that, yung position niya, na very, very pro-China. Is that a good point, you think? Or is that eventually something that they would have to watch as they approach an election year?
For me, I guess one reason why he's pushing for the anti-terror bill is to keep the loyalty of the military despite his super pro-China approach. Parang his offering is, but I'm giving you the anti-terror bill. So maybe that's one way to look at it, that he may be not gaining favor from certain sectors because of that China approach, but at the same time he's able to offer something up to them so that he can balance their loyalty and he can kind of cover all bases.
Ang bawi niya.
Yeah.
Mother, Marites, you agree?
About China, his position
Yeah.
at China.
Yes, yes.
Uh, it's a parang dissonant yung surveys kasi, as you said, majority 80% are against want the Philippines to assert its sovereign rights in the West Philippine Sea, anti-China. Yet, as you mentioned earlier, mataas ang popularity niya, ang taas nung approval rating niya. So very dissonant. I think the policy towards China is something that the next administration has to review kasi titignan nila yung loans and learning from the lessons of other countries. For example, in Indonesia, China was funding their train, what they call bullet train. Now it's mired in corruption, it's delayed. So Indonesia is now asking Japan to fund their bullet train. So I think there's going to be a lot of review on the China deals that this government entered into. So yun yung that's for the future.
Yeah. Speaking of
I would,
infrastructure, sige, go ahead, G.
siguro lang, I would want to look into the timing of all these surveys, because we were talking about how dissonant the survey results are, that Filipinos distrust China a lot, and despite all the controversies, mataas pa rin yung approval rating ng presidente. It could also be the timing of the surveys. If you're conducting the surveys before or long after a controversial move or decision of the president, nag-die down na. So ang mag-emerge pa rin sa survey would be his base, his support base, no? So and if you want to look at parang a broader story, you could also track when certain government aid is being released in particular areas, because I wouldn't discount the possibility that government operators already know saan pupunta ang mga nagsa-survey, ano yung tapos naka-formula na kasi yung mga tanong sa quarterly survey. So they may not be able to manipulate the surveys, but the environment within which people would be responding to these surveys could be influenced.
Okay, interesting kasi as Pia pointed out kanina, the latest survey that we have on record prior to the pandemic is January 2020. And the SWS survey was held December, mga mid-December. So pareho, SWS and Pulse Asia, mga bandang December yan, end of 2019, and then results by early January. And pareho sila eh. Kasi Pulse Asia had even higher, 87%, while SWS, 82%. So there's konting disparity lang, but if you look at it, those are really excellent ratings, and they're actually even higher than previous ratings. So parang talagang palaisipan yun eh. Parang he's been criticized by so many people, the opposition, etc., the drug war, etc. Pero nothing sticks, di ba?
You know, Chai, if I may,
Yeah.
we were asking this. I mean, we had a meeting with one of parang a numbers person who also does this survey in nationwide, no, not belonging to Pulse or SWS, and she explained this in two ways. First is that even in the anti-China sentiment of Filipinos, they do not attach the anti-China sentiment to being anti-Duterte. So they're able to, they're anti-China, but there's the president is there and he has their mandate. And second is that, again, clearly, because very personality oriented yung Pinoy as a public, parang wala din naman kasi silang nakikitang alternative voice, significant alternative voice, and therefore okay lang sa kanila. In fact, kung meron daw nag-decline since the Taal volcanic eruption up to the early days of the pandemic, it's yung affection. Dati kasi grabe yung affection for the president, meaning love, right? Yun yung parang nag-wane. So it's really more like they just support him because he's the president, they voted for him. But talagang ang significant daw na nakita nila na nag-decrease is yung affection.
Okay.
I don't know what that means.
How do you measure affection?
Oo nga.
Mahirap ang divorce sa Philippines eh.
Diba? Hindi na siya Tatay Digong. He's the president. He holds the office.
Yeah. If
Sige, go
just a bit of historical note, because I interviewed Steve Rude yesterday and I've been reading his book on the Philippines. Then he looked at populist presidents in the Philippines. So ang nauna, Manuel Quezon, very populist. Tapos Magsaysay is my guy, si President Magsaysay. Tapos si Erap, ngayon Duterte. Lahat ng populist presidents talagang mahal ng mga tao. Tapos yun nga kasi yung narrative nila, us versus them. As peer relations, I'm protecting you against this greedy businessman. So successful siya, and I'm protecting you against this drug addict. So ang successful ng messaging niya, At yun pala, pag populist ka, you just connect directly. Hindi ka nadadaan sa, like, so, using, social media, walang masyadong filter. I was just looking back, and there's already a formula enhanced pa by technology in Duterte's age.
That's an excellent point. I was gonna say nga kanina, reminds you talaga of ERAP, 'di ba? Yung mga recent presidents na ang daming weaknesses pero still very very popular kasi meron siyang rapport talaga with the ordinary person. Unlike halimbawa si Noy Noy, talagang merong wall doon. Walang empathy unlike the current president. I'd just like to ask you also about yung mga big issues na pumutok the past year. No? So, very quickly, kasama dyan yung anti-terror bill, red tagging. Tapos, he went against nga the perceived, what he called the oligarchs, despite the unfavorable ruling that they got from the arbitration, from international arbitration. And siguro yung besides the Rappler case pa, before Rappler, it's really ABS-CBN, yung closure ng ABS-CBN. Do you see anything that has changed from 2016 all the way to the present, or consistent lang ba talaga ito dun sa kanyang style of leadership? Glenda, what are your thoughts?
Well, if there's any change siguro since the time that he became president, it's diba, his divorce sa communists. Because of course the communists supported him, and he really embraced them and even welcomed them to the palace. And now alam niya, the smart politician that he is, medyo nag-wane na yung interest sa drug war, and he needs another war, right? And so, yun lang, yung parang, yun din yung irony, di ba? In the midst of a pandemic, you're facing a faceless enemy, and you're inserting communism as the biggest threat. And therefore, that shows you how on the one hand, backward he is, continues to be backward politically, but on the other hand, how in tune he is to yung politics nga. Yung kailangan may target na iba outside his government, di ba? So, kailangan may kalaban, kailangan I strike fear. And so, ang fundamental change nun is hindi nararamdaman ng tao at hindi siya tinitake account doon. Mahal na mahal yung mga komunista nun eh. Tapos ngayon, galit na galit siya. Parang, and yet, 50 years nang lumalaban ang communists. It's not as if practically irrelevant na sila. Of course, despite the fact na may political base naman talaga sila.
Do you remember paano niya na-switch yun? Parang before nga, nasa cabinet niya, and then he said, talagang outright, no, yung sympathy. Tapos biglang naging red tagging. You remember, Pia, how that switch, or how he turned it on and off?
Yeah, it really started with yung mga security officials whispering to him, diba, about how the 4Ps was supposedly being diverted to mga by Judy Taguilo, who was progressive then. He was saying parang she was using the funds, and then after nun, parang they started falling like leaves from the tree of his cabinet. Parang wala, they just lumalagis na lang, and then eventually he started on this war against the communists, setting up a task force to end local communists and having this whole of government approach to this war. So yun, it was a gradual but at the same time shocking turn of events that really was an interesting look into his governance style.
Was it tactical, you think?
I think because he realized eventually how much he needed the security officials' loyalty more than the leftists in his cabinet. And siguro he reached the point when, when it comes to choosing one over the other, he just chose the military. And true enough, you can see that he's done so many concessions to the military.
Marites, you wanted to say something?
Just saying, looking back, although the context was different during the time of President Cory Aquino, doesn't that remind you about Cory, who also put together a cabinet from left to right.
Mm,
Then eventually had to get rid of the left because the right, they had the coups, the defense
right.
establishment was
Right.
also resisting. So parang it just shows that uh, it's very difficult really for a leader to put together um, extreme forces in one cabinet, coherent cabinet.
Okay. I'll jump lang I'll take advantage of Gigi's presence here. I'd like to ask you, G, about your assessment of Duterte's governance. Parang, uh, what did he do quite well, and where did he fail really, really miserably from a governance perspective?
This is something we touched on when we assessed in April if the government was doing enough responding to the pandemic. But this describes his entire style of governance. That if you're really not strategic, if you're really not prepared from the beginning, if you really don't have an efficient system, um, in governance, lalabas yun during times of crisis. It's not like there have been changes, may nag-improve or may nag-worsen. It's not. Yun talaga yung quality ng governance that he could offer from the beginning. Tapos dumadating lang yung mga crisis para ma-uncover yun. Yun yung isang nakikita ko. He never got past the parochial mindset. So when he's faced with bigger governance problems and he cannot like really attack it strategically anymore, he slides back to where he is comfortable. Peace and order, galit, may kalaban tayo, ito yung kumukontra sa atin, ito yung nagpe-prevent sa atin from making any progress. Yung ganun.
Marites, you want to add anything, or Glenda?
Is this about his governance
Yeah.
style? Well, actually consistent siya from the very beginning. Single issue lang siya drug war. So consistent. Kailangan use force. So yung approach niyang yun, hindi na nagbabago. Kung may kagaya ng, and he really relies nga on the military. What surprised me recently was because of the COVID pandemic, the increase of cases in Cebu, ang pinadala niya yung environment secretary who also was in charge of the closure of Boracay. So parang single issue, just rely on the man in uniform because he obeys orders. But he never thought, shouldn't we send the DOH, an epidemiologist, to coordinate with them? Shouldn't we rely on the regional director of the DOH? Shouldn't we rely on the city? Di ba, Gigi, decentralized ang health?
Yes, mother.
How would you explain that?
Actually, I was looking at the response of like just going through all the resolutions of the IATF and looking back lang for my Duterte Year 4 story. And one thing that struck me pala was even if parang it seems like more of the same is what we're getting from Duterte, one way he deviated from his usual response is nung early months of the pandemic, which was January to February, wala yung overkill, overreaction response that might have saved the day for us back then. Kasi if you remember, he was overly cautious. He didn't want to impose restrictions, and the first few resolutions of the IATF were just about how to restrict Filipinos coming back and how to quarantine them. So wala pa masyadong how to protect the domestic population, what domestic policies to implement. That only came when nagka-local transmission. And if you recall, the national task force that he came up with was only convened 2 months after our first case. Compare this to Vietnam, where the Prime Minister convened his National Steering Committee a week after their first case. So at the time when we needed for him to overreact, to like do something overkill, he didn't do it. Um, and it's really a stark contrast to what he did with Boracay when parang he just saw a PowerPoint of parang very murky waters in Boracay, biglang, let's shut down the island for 5 months. So, saan yung ganong reaction? wala. And his promise of decisive leadership in 2016, parang it failed to materialize when we needed it the most.
Bakit siya parang may aversion on the pandemic issue? There seems to be an aversion to experts. Parang yun na nga, ang fallback police o kaya military. Duque, the Secretary of Health, would have been a logical person to depend on, di ba? Ang daming atake kay Duque, but he has kept Duque in place, and yet not allowing him to play a bigger role.
Ang tingin ko lang, no, he is mistaking this decisiveness for having to act without thinking, actually. He doesn't have the patience for processes. No, parang for example in Cebu, nung nag-spike yung cases, instead of talking to the local officials, making them sit down with the task force implementers, hindi niya kinausap yung mga locals. Immediately he assumed na siguro you're incompetent, you're doing it wrong, so I'm sending that there a military man to fix things for you. They even canceled all the quarantine passes in the entire Cebu City without telling the LGU first. Ang nag-cancel yung regional police. Yung ganun, wala siya sigurong pasensya even with listening to what the experts are projecting, what the experts are suggesting we should do. It's actually what's lacking sa kanyang last 4 years. I'm very sure there are strategic thinkers within the bureaucracy and among his advisors. Pero I think it's the president's style or personality that he doesn't really have the patience for them. Hindi ko to uupuan. So kung ano lang yung biglang nag-strike sa akin, nag-jump at sa akin na point in any presentation or briefing, I would act on that without looking at ano yung context noon, ano yung mga nakadugtong doon na issues.
Glenda?
I think because the president really believes that he is the law, diba? And therefore, and to Pia's point, diba, it is really nakakagulat that in the first 2 months when we were expecting a more decisive leadership at the onset of the crisis, he was a bit paralyzed by it because this was an enemy that he was not familiar with, and therefore it took time for him to completely absorb it. And therefore, because he could not absorb it, he could not make any decisions because to him, dapat galing sa kanya yon. Any decision should emanate from his wisdom, diba? So in the case of Duque, for example, biruin mo all the a lot of the rival factions in his own government already are asking for Duque's head. He is perceived to really have been incompetent in handling this, but he stuck his guns and he's siding with Duque because to the president, he's the ultimate judge of who is competent, who is honest in government. Wala, di ba? Wala sa kanya yung other leaders kasi draw a line na ito hindi ko to talgeran to kasi there are basic standards of accountability, transparency, maybe due process because the ombudsman is investigating the DOH and he said I will talk to the ombudsman, I trust Duque. So the president, siya ang ultimate judge of who is the best, who is the most honest and who is the most competent in government.
Pero di ba, quite ironic din yung problema sa Cebu. He was a mayor before. So, alam niya dapat meron siyang appreciation of autonomy, of local autonomy. So, dapat yung taga-ron, yung in-appoint, or dapat i-consult mo the local government officials of Cebu and have them have their own inputs. But in this case, hindi. Taga-Maynila yung ipapadala to solve a very local and probably nuanced problem. That's also an issue, hindi ba?
Pwede rin kasing, as Glenda was saying, Duterte has the impression na ako yung batas, parang I'm the one who knows best. in any situation. Ang nangyari kasi sa Cebu officials, nakipag-away sa National Task Force before this order came. So parang pinreempt mo na, inunahan mo na yung presidente that you are questioning the wisdom of the national government. So I think with that, nag-shut off na si presidente na, okay, you deal with my generals. Parang hindi na tayo mayor to mayor, governor to governor na nag-uusap. Inunahan mo siya eh. Mapapansin nyo, in all the briefings with the task force members, alam na nung mga taga-task force how to handle Duterte that way eh. When each one of them presents, they would always premise their statements and updates with, dahil po inutos nyo, Mr. President, kasi po napansin nyo, Mr. President, kasi po tinawag nyo, Mr. President. So, parang kailangan nakafocus sa kanya, nasa kanya yung credits. Parang, you don't make it sound like ikaw, original idea mo yon, or ikaw yung nakapansin noon, or ikaw yung magko-correct noon. It really has to go to him.
Pero very risky yun because kung pataas yung numbers in Cebu, tapos dito sa atin, we're approaching 40,000 infected cases by month's end. Parang hindi source of comfort yun na I am in command, I am in control, but the pandemic is out of control. Diba? It's beyond me.
I don't think he sees it that way, Chai, because when I listened to part of his the last meeting, message or address to the nation, he said that he was very pleased with the recovery rate. And I was shocked because we have the lowest recovery rate in Southeast Asia, and the numbers of the OH are incomplete. The recoveries don't show the complete picture pa. So sabi ko, where is he getting? Is he just, kasi it's nice to be blissfully ignorant. You just know this. That, we're doing well, we have good recovery. But hey, how about our neighbor? How are they,
Yeah.
So I said, oh my God. Well, I don't want to get carried away, but I was just so surprised. Nakagulat lang na, as you said, Gigi, kasi they pander to him. So, instead of encouraging critical thinking, disagreement, siguro, I don't know, he's not maybe the only president who's like that.
Both Trump and Bolsonaro are like that, diba? Parang pinapangatawan na nila yung position nila from the beginning na let's not take this seriously. So, hindi pwedeng mapahiya. Could he be that like that, Tia?
I think it's more of his officials want to give him good news to kind of also highlight na maganda yung how they're fulfilling his orders. Parang, Mr. President, we have only good news kasi so it will preserve their role in the IETF. The same way that si Roque always compares Filipino case numbers to the US and Europe. So obviously, we look much better because in the hundreds of thousands na yung cases nila. So ganun parang it's all relatively, we're relatively better off, but they always fail to compare it to the more relevant like examples of Vietnam or Cambodia, Thailand.
And what happened to Leah Chon is also well, a warning sign, di ba?
Yeah.
If you dare counter or criticize, ganyan mangyayari sa'yo.
Kaya lang, I'm sorry to say that he's not exactly a good example. Anyway, go ahead.
Ibang topic pa yan.
Just to add lang to I think to be fair naman to the president, yung one preferring to hear the good news over bad is not unique to him. I remember anecdotes also about President Aquino, Noy, that he really would he would see one cabinet secretary who always brings him the bad news and he'd say, wag niyo man papasukin yan sa cabinet meeting yan, si bearer of bad news. So, I think when you stay in Malacanang, after 3 years, you have this sense of power, di ba, na parang But I think the key difference lang there would be, Noynoy Aquino would spend time really just reading policy drafts, talking to people. Really, there's an effort naman to learn because he knew naman that he was not experienced enough. And yun, parang may, there's effort really to clearly understand certain things before he makes a decision. Pero ganun, I think lahat ng presidente ganun, gusto talaga nila yung good news lang eh.
Pero extreme, ano, from noy-noy na talagang study, consult. Ngayon, action. Kulang sa pag-aaral. Okay. Go. Gigi, anong sabi mo?
No, I was saying, mayor talaga mag-isip. Parang, di ba mayor ganun? Kung anong problema yung dumating sa opisina mo ngayon, papa-actionan mo agad. So,
yeah. Sige, siguro another overriding theme is yung question nga about democracy, no? Parang some people say, lalo na yung critics of the administration, say that there's less democracy. Others naman are saying, anong pinagsasasabi nyo? Eh parang I'm still free. I don't feel what you are feeling. Are you which of the two are you more inclined to believe in, that we are less democratic today than we were prior to May 2016, or parehas lang naman, kayo naman ang OA nyo? What do you think?
you're really expecting somebody would say, yeah.
I didn't get that.
Please
Yeah,
kindly repeat.
because Chai is asking us, parang, what's your take? Are we less democratic or we're still democratic o A lang tayo? Parang I was asking her, do you expect one of us to say we're still like very democratic before that? I think yung impression ng publiko na democratic tayo, it's always in comparison kasi to what happened during the Marcos time. Yung mga obvious manifestations ng lack of freedom, yun yung ginagawa nilang points of comparison na hindi naman kayo pinaghuhuli during the curfew at yung ganun. Hindi naman dinutukot yung mga aktivista by the dozens, or hindi ganun eh. Or hindi naman pinasara yung newspaper mo, hindi naman ni-raid yung newsroom mo. So sasabihin nila, malaya pa kayo kasi you can still publish, you can still post your news. Pero ang nangyari kasi sa Duterte government, in that way, mas sophisticated yung pag-dismantle niya ng mga democratic institutions. It's not about, well, may extremes naman, no? Pinatanggal mo yung Supreme Court Chief Justice. Pero yung very subtle na i-impluensyahan mo yung institution instead of like directly shutting it down. It's still a way to chip at the democratic space. Pero hindi agad na-absorb ng publiko because it's not like exactly what Marcos did. Alam mo?
Mm-hmm. Anyone else? Pia?
I think that even if parang in the previous years, yung masa na Filipino didn't really understand yung crackdown on the press, I think with the ABS-CBN shutdown, mas naging real siya for them because we're talking about your typical Filipino who tunes in every 6 p.m. to their favorite telenovela and suddenly they can't do it anymore. And daming mga stories from like the poorest households na their lolas just threw away the TV na lang kasi wala nang ABS-CBN. So I think ito yung first time na nagsisink in talaga yung crackdown. Like even here, my own house help, parang naiinis na kay Duterte kasi parang bakit wala nang ABS-CBN, gano'n. So parang it's the first time siguro that it's really dawning on them how powers that he has could really impact their source of information. So I'm not sure if this will lead to a downturn in his approval ratings, but I think definitely kaysa before, mas aware na sila na parang umuonte yung sources of expression that they're used to.
Mm-hmm. This is also the danger dun sa when Duterte picks a fight with specific local governments. Kasi when yun yung lagi nating sinasabi na wag kang makikialam sa politics ng isang locality, especially when they love their leader. Ngayon, especially in the pandemic, tas mang-aaway ka ng local officials, mas nakikita ng tao yung contrast na we're doing well here, our mayor or governor is serving us well, tapos dadaw ka from the national government, from Malacanang. This could backfire later on. Parang walang respect sa autonomy, walang respect sa decentralization.
Sige, last question na siguro. So, this is the 4th year, next year will be the 5th year. What do you want to see in 2021?
Ako, can I answer that first?
Go.
I just really like to see a really strengthened Department of Health, better prepared public hospitals, better leadership in the OH. I don't know if the president will fire Duque, but the pandemic has really taught us that the priority, we really have to reprioritize and put a lot of money while the lessons are fresh into the OH. And imagine, I cannot imagine that we only had one test laboratory when the pandemic struck, only one. Now we have 66. Compare this to Vietnam, which had 3 in January and 112 in April, which means they never slept. They mobilized everyone. They built 100+ labs. So I wish that we could see that, especially that the new threat is really this virus. I mean, we can see more of infectious diseases coming our way.
Ako, Miss Chai, I wish, kasi we're going into a year na papunta na sa national elections. So I'm hoping for new faces to emerge that would show people that while we still want a leader who is emphatic and who is in tune with the people's emotions and their feelings, parang it's not enough that a leader is like that, na charismatic and populist, but kailangan rin may substance and has patience for understanding complex processes and consensus building. Kasi I think more than ever, this pandemic is showing us that, you know, hindi lang enough yung masalita and magaling mag-messaging, but kailangan rin magaling to act in an efficient and timely manner when crises like this erupts. And hopefully this pandemic convinces people to look for that kind of leader. And hopefully then we've also seen new faces emerge from this pandemic, like local leaders who are outshining the president. So maybe this will be an opportunity for them to step up and get more attention from the voting public.
So yung mga may potential, di ba? Lumabas na kayo before 2022.
Ay, wag muna kasi mapapropaganda kayo. You know how administrations destroy the strong contenders, di ba?
Saka they need to complete 9 years so that they can also do more for their locality. Diba?
Yeah.
Anything to add, Glenda?
I
What do
share
you
the
want to
same
see?
wish. I share the same wish as Pia's, but more than that, I look forward to leaders, new faces who actually want to be leaders, who will not hesitate to say, I want the presidency because I could mobilize people, I could inspire the nation again. Parang, kasi, di ba, even the president himself was a reluctant candidate. Dapat tigilan na natin yung mga reluctant candidate na yan. Tigilan na yung mga dahil gusto ng universe, gusto ng tadhana. You know, I look forward to a year wherein, you know, I want to be president. I want the presidency because I am trained for it. I can mobilize people. I think this is a nation that's so wounded, waiting to be inspired, but also waiting to be mobilized. So, yun ang aking wish.
Ako, I'd take the cudgels for local governments. Kasi, in effect, this is a way para singilin mo si President Duterte sa isa sa mga major campaign promises niya na he would strengthen the local governments, he would channel the development towards the regions. Pero, so yun sana, after this pandemic, nakita na natin kung nasaan yung yung weaknesses ng local and national dynamics precisely because sisisihin ko yung Congress during the first Aquino time that when President Cory Aquino was pushing for decentralization, nag-hold back yung mga congressmen, pati yung mga senador in drafting a local government code that will fully decentralize not just the services but the funds that would go with them. Kasi whoever is the president, yun yung magiging problema mo why you don't really have yung real autonomy. Because you just keep giving local governments responsibilities pero yung corresponding funding na-hoard pa rin ng national government. But now we see, yung sabi nga ni Mother, kailangan strengthen yung health system. For example, makikita mo na the best level of government to deliver these services yung nasa local and at least yung regional and provincial and city. Pero limitado sila. They devise their own way. So, sana yun yung mangyari from here. Na totohanin ni Duterte yung sinasabi niya, he will strengthen the regions. And, gawan niya ng paraan yun. You channel the funds there, you do the amendments na necessary sa mga batas natin to really strengthen them, but at the same time, putting in place checks and balances para walang aabuso naman na local leaders.
Okay, so thank you very much for your inputs and your assessments of the past year, of the fourth year of the Duterte presidency. I agree that the pandemic has really taught us a lot of lessons. Siguro foremost doon yung the need to understand the nuances of governance, the need for yung urgency of competent leadership. And siguro, important din yung sinabi ni Glenda, no? We want leaders to come forward, but they need to want it. Hindi yung sapilitan lang. And that they want to lead the country, no? Given the challenges that we will be facing after this pandemic. We don't know what the country will look like economically. Madaming babalik na OFWs na walang trabaho. Maraming nagugutom, mas marami pang magugutom siguro next year, no? So we really need strong and competent leadership. So we're looking forward to a fifth year. Hopefully, the lessons of the pandemic will carry over to Duterte year 5. So thank you very much for joining the discussion, Marites, Glenda, Gigi, and Pia. I'm Chai Hofilania. Thank you for joining us. Next month ulit, hopefully, hindi ko alam kung quarantine pa rin tayo. Good night, good morning, wherever you are. Thank you and have a good day.